Don't get in the car! The shout, raw and desperate, sliced through the morning chill of the corporate parking garage. It was a sound that didn't belong here, among the quiet hum of German engineering and the scent of expensive leather. Every executive from Vance Holdings, poised to start another day of conquering the world, froze in place. A 12-year-old boy, a blur of motion in a worn-out hoodie, was sprinting full tilt across the polished concrete. His target, the gleaming black Mercedes where the CEO himself, Arthur Vance, was just about to open his door. Vance's hand, adorned with a watch worth more than a family car, hovered over the chrome handle. Around him, his security detail, men built like refrigerators, instantly tensed, their hands moving to their jackets as they started to converge on the boy. "Grab him!" the head of security barked, but the kid was like a lightning bolt. His name was Leo. He was the son of Maria, the woman who cleaned these very offices late into the night. For 15 years, Maria had been a ghost in this corporate machine, erasing the traces of the powerful so they could start each day fresh. Her son, Leo, was a ghost's shadow, a boy who spent countless nights doing homework in silent lobbies, completely invisible to the titans of industry who walked past him, but not today. Today, Leo was making himself seen. "Please, sir, don't get in," he gasped, skidding to a halt just a few feet from Vance. He was panting, his face drenched in sweat despite the cold. Arthur Vance, a 52-year-old titan of real estate, looked down at the boy. His expression was a mixture of sheer annoyance and a flicker of curiosity. This was an unscheduled event, an unwelcome variable in a life that was planned down to the minute. He'd never seen this child before, this boy who was now derailing a morning packed with meetings that could make or break fortunes. "What in God's name is this?" Vance muttered, his eyes scanning for an explanation. Where did he come from? Leo knew he had only seconds before he was hauled away. He locked his gaze with the most powerful man he had ever seen. The boy's eyes weren't just scared. They were burning with a terrifying certainty. "Sir," he said, his voice trembling but clear. "Last night I saw them in your office, and then they were messing with your car." For a split second, the world seemed to stop. A cold dread, something Vance hadn't felt in years, slithered up his spine. His mind, a finely tuned calculator of risk and reward, began to process the boy's frantic words. This kid, this invisible boy, who spent his nights in the building's hidden corners, might have seen something he wasn't supposed to see. Leo was fighting for breath, his small hands clenched into fists. He'd held this secret for hours, wrestling with the fear of being disbelieved, of getting his mother fired, of making things worse. But a man's life was on the line, and the weight of that knowledge was too heavy for a 12-year-old to carry alone. Vance glanced at the perfect, polished Mercedes, then back at the boy. He saw the impatient, scornful looks on the faces of his executives. In their world, this was just a nuisance, a piece of grit in the gears. But something in Leo's desperate, unwavering stare made him pause. This boy wasn't just a part of the building. He was a silent observer of its hidden life. He knew its rhythms, its late-night sounds, its secrets. Right there, under the disapproving glares of men in $1,000 suits, Leo stood his ground, a small guardian of a terrible truth. If you believe that one small voice can be the most powerful force in the world, make sure you subscribe, because what happens next is a testament to the fact that true heroes are often the people we refuse to see. Vance studied Leo's face, his mind racing. A kid, the son of a cleaner, was creating a scene in front of his entire senior team. The situation was borderline absurd, deeply embarrassing. Yet, he couldn't shake the genuine terror he saw in the boy's eyes. "Arthur, for heaven's sake, what is this nonsense?" It was Derek Shaw, the vice president of sales, his voice dripping with condescension. He smoothed down his perfectly tailored suit jacket. "You're not actually going to listen to this kid, are you? We have the quarterly review in less than an hour." Vance raised a hand, and Shaw fell silent. He crouched slightly to get closer to Leo's level. "What did you see?" "Exactly." Leo swallowed, the lump of fear in his throat feeling like a stone. "Last night, Mom was cleaning the top floor. I was in the lobby, and I saw two men come down in the private elevator. They weren't employees. They came down here, to the garage. They spent almost 20 minutes under your car." "Two men." Vance pressed, his brow furrowing. "Leo, half the men in this building wear suits." "But not like them, sir," Leo insisted, his hands starting to draw pictures in the air. "They moved quietly. One of them, he kept looking at his watch, and I heard him say something to the other. Guy." Leo's eyes darted around, as if he was afraid to say the words out loud. He whispered, "The nightingale sings at dawn." An absolute bone-deep chill washed over Arthur Vance. The blood in his veins turned to ice. It wasn't just a random phrase. It was a code, a message of death sent from a ruthless business rival. He had crossed months ago, a man who operated in the darkest corners of their industry. Vance had received a warning, a threat, but he had dismissed it as posturing. He was wrong. "This is ridiculous," Shaw scoffed, letting out a nervous laugh. "Are we really delaying a multi-million-dollar meeting because of a child's eavesdropping? A nightingale? What's next? A secret decoder ring?" Leo turned to face the vice president, his fear momentarily replaced by a flash of defiance that stunned everyone. "I know what I heard, and I know you think I'm nobody, but I know every sound this building makes at night. I know when something is wrong." Just then, Maria came running from a service entrance, her faded blue cleaning uniform a stark contrast to the sea of designer suits. Her face was pale with panic. "Leo, what are you doing? Oh my God, Mr. Vance, I am so sorry. He's just a boy. He has a wild imagination sometimes." She grabbed her son's arm, trying to pull him away from the circle of power. "Mom, no!" Leo insisted, gently pulling his arm free. "I can't let him get in the car." Maria bowed her head, her cheeks burning with a shame that had been her companion for 15 years. 15 years of being the invisible woman who made everything perfect for people who never knew her name. "Maria," Vance said, his voice unexpectedly gentle. It was the first time he'd ever spoken her name. The executives around him looked on, in disbelief. "Your son is trying to tell me something important. You've raised a brave young man." He then turned his gaze back to Leo, his expression now hard as granite. He stood up, his mind made up. The quarterly review, the millions on the table. None of it mattered now. He pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over his head of security's number. "Graves," he said into the phone, his voice cold and clear. "Lock down this garage. Nobody, in or out. Get the bomb squad on the line. I want my car stripped down to the chassis. Now." Derek Shaw's face was a mask of disbelief, his jaw slack. The other executives exchanged nervous glances, the casual arrogance of their morning completely shattered. This wasn't a delay anymore. It was a potential crime scene. Maria clutched her son's arm, her knuckles white, her mind reeling from the whiplash of the last 10 minutes. One moment, she was terrified of her son getting them both fired. The next, she was standing in a sealed-off garage, watching the CEO treat her son's words as gospel. The security team worked with grim efficiency, clearing the area. Minutes felt like hours. The silence in the garage was heavy, punctuated only by the quiet, professional murmurs of the bomb squad as they swarmed the black Mercedes. Leo stood by his mother, small and still, but his eyes never left the car. He had done his part. Now, he could only watch. Finally, the head of the bomb squad, a man with a face carved from stone, walked over to Vance. He held up a small, clear bag containing a tangle of wires connected to a block of plastic explosive. "Mr. Vance," he said, his voice low and devoid of emotion, "it's a military-grade device, sophisticated, wired to the ignition. The timer was set for 9:15 a.m. sharp." Collective, sharp intake of breath rippled through the executives. Fine fee. 15. The exact time Arthur Vance's car would have been pulling into the thick of morning traffic on the city's busiest bridge. It was a kill shot, designed to be brutally effective and publicly spectacular. Shaw stumbled back a step, his face draining of all color. He looked at Leo, not with contempt anymore, but with a dawning horror. They had all been standing just feet away from a bomb, and the only person who knew was the cleaner's son. Vance knelt, ignoring the expensive fabric of his trousers pressing against the grimy concrete. He placed his hands on Leo's shoulders, forcing the boy to look at him. "You saved my life," he said, and the raw gratitude in his voice was unmistakable. "How can I ever repay you?" Leo just shook his head, still overwhelmed. You believed me," he whispered. "Yes," Vance said, his gaze intense. "I did. And now I need you to help me understand why someone would want to do this." He stood up, his mind already shifting from victim to predator. He looked at the circle of pale, shaken faces. "The rest of you, all meetings are cancelled. Go to your offices and wait for instructions. Say nothing to anyone." Then he turned to Maria. "Maria, I need you and Leo to come with me. Now." "But, sir?" "My shift," Maria stammered, still lost in the old world where her duties were all that mattered. Vance's expression softened for a fraction of a second. "Your duties have changed." The elevator ride to the penthouse floor was silent and surreal. Maria had cleaned the outside of these brass doors 1,000 times, but she had never been inside. As they opened directly into Vance's office, she and Leo stepped into another universe. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a breathtaking panorama of the city. The space was vast, minimalist, and exuded a quiet, intimidating power. For 15 years, Maria had worked to make this world pristine for others. Now, she was standing in its very center, feeling more out of place than ever. Vance walked straight to his desk and gestured for them to sit in the plush leather chairs opposite him. "Maria," he began gently, "we are not in trouble here. You and your son are the only two people in this entire company I know I can trust right now." He leaned forward, his focus entirely on Leo. "Leo, those men you saw. You said they came from my office. Did you see anything else?" Leo took a deep breath, the sheer scale of the office making him feel even smaller. "When I was helping Mom clean the conference room last night, I saw some files on your desk. They were for a project called the Northgate development." Vance's eyes narrowed. Northgate was his most contentious deal. It was a plan to build a massive luxury complex, but it required bulldozing a low-income neighborhood. Community backlash had been fierce, and Vance, feeling a rare pang of conscience, had put the project on indefinite hold just last week. "The men who worked on your car," Leo continued, his voice gaining confidence. "I heard them mention it. One said, 'With Vance out of the picture, Northgate is a go.' They said the contracts would be signed before the weekend." Maria's hand flew to her mouth. She knew Northgate. Her own sister lived in that neighborhood, in a small house that would be one of the first to be demolished. The conspiracy wasn't just about corporate greed anymore. It was personal. Vance stood up and began to pace, the pieces clicking into place with terrifying speed. Someone planned to kill him, make it look like an accident or an outside attack, and then have his successor immediately push through the Northgate deal. It was a bloody, ruthless, but sickeningly brilliant business plan. The explosive device was sophisticated. The men who planted it had access to his private elevator and his personal parking spot. "This was an inside job, Leo," Vance said, thinking out loud. "Someone in my inner circle helped them." He stopped and looked at the boy. "Did you see anyone else? Anyone you recognized?" Leo's gaze dropped to the floor. He hesitated, picking at a loose thread on his jeans. He knew this next part was the most dangerous of all. "Sir, I didn't see them with the men last night, but last week I saw one of the directors talking to them in the lobby, late. They were trying to stay in a corner where the cameras couldn't see them well. But I saw." "Which director, Leo?" Vance asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Leo looked up, his eyes meeting Vance's. He took a shaky breath and delivered the final, devastating piece of the puzzle. "It was Mr. Shaw, the man who wanted you to ignore me this morning." A heavy silence filled the penthouse office, thick with the weight of Leo's accusation. Derek Shaw, his second in command, the man he'd mentored for over a decade, had tried to have him murdered. Arthur Vance felt a cold, calculated rage replace the shock. He had the motive. He had the traitor. What he didn't have was proof. It would be the word of an invisible boy against a powerful executive. Vance knew exactly how the board and the world would see that. He looked at Leo, truly looked at him, and saw something he'd been blind to for years. This boy wasn't just a witness. He was an asset. His invisibility was a superpower. "Leo," Vance said, his voice low and intense, "you know this building better than anyone, better than my security team. You know its secrets. I need to know, where would a man like Shaw hide his digital tracks?" Leo's eyes lit up with understanding. He was no longer just a scared kid. He was being asked for his expertise. "There's a server room," he said, the words tumbling out. "On the 30th floor. It's an old one, used for secondary backups. No one ever goes in there. All the company emails and calls are archived to it automatically. If Mr. Shaw was planning something, the proof is in that room." Maria gripped the arms of her chair. "Leo, this is too dangerous. If they catch you—" "Mom," Leo said, turning to her, his voice soft but firm. "You always taught me that you have to do the right thing, especially when it's hard. Mr. Vance listened to me when no one else would. Now it's our turn to help him." An audacious plan began to form. They wouldn't go to the authorities yet. Not without irrefutable evidence. That night, an unlikely team of 3 would break into their own company. Vance, the king of the castle, Maria, its invisible keeper, and Leo, its ghost. That night, Vance Holdings was a different world. The hum of commerce was replaced by the quiet hum of servers. Maria pushed her cleaning cart down the empty 30th floor hallway, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Vance, dressed in dark, casual clothes, followed a few paces behind. looking utterly alien without his tailored suit. Leo was the calmest of them all. He was in his element. "The guard makes his round at 2:15, Leo whispered, pointing to a small, unmarked door. "That gives us a 7-minute window." He pulled a small tablet from his backpack. "The lock is digital, but it's an old system. I've watched the IT guys access it 100 times. His fingers flew across the screen. A moment later, a quiet click echoed in the hallway. The door was open. Inside the server room, the air was cold and filled with the whirring of fans. Leo moved with a purpose that amazed Vance. He connected his tablet to a terminal, his face illuminated by the glow of the screen. "My cousin taught me some basic coding," he explained, not looking up. "He said knowledge is power, especially for people who don't have any other kind." For 40 minutes, that felt like a lifetime. They dug. And then they found it. A digital treasure trove of treason. Encrypted emails between Shaw and the rival corporation, outlining the murder plot and the subsequent takeover. Audio logs of phone calls planning the bombing. And the smoking gun. Secret financial transfers from a shell corporation controlled by Shaw to the 2 men who planted the bomb. It was all there. A complete, damning portrait of a man consumed by greed. Vance watched the evidence download, a KDT mixture of fury and profound admiration on his face. He looked at the 12-year-old boy who had just dismantled a multi-million-dollar conspiracy with a second-hand tablet and a lifetime of being overlooked. The next afternoon, the main boardroom at Vance Holdings was packed. Derek Shaw stood at the head of the table, his face a mask of solemn concern. He had called an emergency meeting with all major investors. "As you know," he began, his voice smooth as silk, "we were the target of a vicious external attack yesterday. While we are all grateful that our CEO, Arthur Vance, is safe, this incident highlights a need for immediate and decisive leadership to stabilize the company." He let that hang in the air for a moment. "That is why I am proposing we fast-track the Northgate development project. It will send a message to the market that we are strong, and we are moving forward. That decision will never be made." The voice came from the back of the room. Arthur Vance stepped forward, flanked by Leo and Maria. The silence was instantaneous. Shaw went pale, his composure cracking for the first time. "Arthur, I'm glad you could make it. We were just discussing new security protocols." "Let's call it what it was, Derek," Vance said, his voice like ice. "Attempted murder. Orchestrated by you." A wave of shocked murmurs filled the room. Shaw forced a laugh. "Arthur, you're clearly not yourself. The stress of yesterday." He was cut off as Leo pressed a key on his laptop. The massive presentation screens behind Shaw flickered to life. His own emails, detailing the plot, filled the screens for everyone to see. Then his own voice pulled from the call logs, echoed through the speakers. "The Nightingale problem will be solved Thursday morning. Have the succession papers ready." Shaw's face contorted, shifting from shock to rage to pure panic. "This is a setup. My emails were hacked." Vance nodded to Leo again. The screen changed. Financial documents appeared, showing payments from Shaw's shell company to the accounts of the 2 bombers. And finally, a grainy but clear security photo, one Leo had found from a blind spot camera he knew existed, showing Shaw in the lobby, shaking hands with the very men who had tried to kill Arthur Vance. Shaw looked wildly around the table, at the horrified faces of the investors who had admired him just minutes before. His eyes finally landed on the small boy in the worn-out hoodie. Who found this?" he whispered, his voice cracking. Vance placed a heavy hand on Leo's shoulder. This brilliant young man did. The son of Maria, one of our most dedicated employees. They saved my life, Derek. They uncovered your entire pathetic scheme because they were paying attention while you were busy seeing them as part of the furniture. At that exact moment, the boardroom doors opened, and two federal agents walked in. Shaw stared at Leo, at the boy he had dismissed as a street urchin, and, in that horrifying moment of clarity, he understood. His ambition, his career, his freedom, it had all been destroyed by a child he had deemed completely and utterly irrelevant. As the agents led him away in handcuffs, Vance addressed the stunned room. "Gentlemen," he announced, "I'd like to introduce you to Leo, our new special consultant for internal security, and his mother, Maria, our new director of operations." He then delivered the final blow. The Northgate project is cancelled, effective immediately. Its entire budget will be redirected into a new foundation to create educational and employment opportunities for the very community it threatened to displace. There, in a room built on power and privilege, a new order was forged. 6 months later, as Vance watched Leo mentor a group of kids in a brand-new community center, the one that stood where the Northgate bulldozers were supposed to be, he finally understood the true meaning of wealth. True power wasn't about building skyscrapers. It was about lifting people up, especially the ones society tries to make invisible. If this story showed you that a single voice, no matter how small, can change the world, then subscribe to our channel. Because the greatest heroes are often hiding in plain sight, just waiting for someone to finally see them.